Up next on Eco Company.
We're headed into the cotton fields. It may look clean, but cotton's actually one of the dirtiest crops around.
Cotton has always been one of the most toxic. It started out with the boll weevil and ways to try to kill that.
But out here, farmers are doing things differently. And Jordan's hitching a ride to check out their road to sustainability. Then it's time for some plant power.
We're doing an environmental Save the Bay Day, and we're planting a lot and digging up and watering.
Teens dig deep to restore an ecosystem and help bring this area back to its natural habitat.
And taking water off the menu.
As soon as my family and I sat down, the waiters just brought us these huge glasses of water. And I was like, you know, that's such a waste.
Meet some high school students on a mission to get restaurants to conserve H2O. Eco Company
starts now.
Thanks for tuning in to Eco Company. I'm Jelena.
And I'm Brendan. Chances are you're wearing a t-shirt right now made out of cotton.
But ever stop to think about where it came from or how it's made?
Whether it's organic or grown with chemicals.
Cotton can be hard on the environment and the farmers in the field.
And as Jordan found out, there's change on the horizon.
I'm surrounded by fields of cotton in California's San Joaquin Valley. It's one of the top producing agricultural fields in the world. And what we discover here will change the way you think about your favorite old t-shirt. Welcome to Los Banos, California, a place where cotton is king, and fields of so-called white gold stretch for miles.
I think it's really hard for people to even know where their cotton comes from.
And although cotton may look clean, it's anything but.
Even if it's only one cotton shirt, cotton has a big footprint in the world.
Did you know it requires over 700 gallons of water to grow enough cotton for a single t-shirt?
Cotton historically has had a lot of bad names. It's been called a thirsty crop. It's also been one of the traditionally highest pesticide users in the state of California, and also used some of the most toxic chemicals that are used in agriculture.
Worldwide, more pesticides are sprayed on cotton than any other crop, except in places like this. Here, farmers are on the road to sustainability.
We've been working with California cotton farmers to reduce their pesticide use.
Marcia Gibbs is the executive director of the Sustainable Cotton Project, and we're hitching a ride with the nonprofit to find out how they're doing it. All right, guys, it's time for us to load up and head out. Let's go see some cotton. It looks like we've arrived at our first destination just in time.
What you see here is a field ready to harvest.
And soon, these machines will go into action. It's time for the harvest to begin, here and across the valley. These huge tractors weave up and down the fields, picking cotton row by row. The SCP says cotton cultivation uses about 11% of the world's pesticides, and some of those are classified as carcinogens by the Environmental Protection Agency.
Cotton has always been one of the most toxic. It started out with the boll weevil and ways to try to kill that.
That's this critter, beetles that just love to munch on cotton buds and flowers. They brought the U.S. cotton industry in the South to its knees in the 1920s. So when synthetic chemicals came around during World War II, guess what farmers used to get rid of their problem pests?
People were just basically spraying fields without any idea what or why was out there.
In the late 70s, people started to wise up. The U.S. government got a successful eradication program going. The idea was to start using nature to control things.
One of the things we really try and stress is that it's a biological system, and that there are good bugs and then there are the pest bugs out there. And a cotton field will have a very large number of beneficial natural enemies that will manage the key pests, which would include a whitefly, aphids.
It's called integrated pest management, a way to control pests using as little insecticide as possible, while still growing a high-quality crop. It's Dr. Peter Goodell's specialty at University of California Cooperative Extension.
You have to, one, get out here frequently, look at the field, monitor the pest, identify the pest, assess the pest, and then start making some decisions about how you're going to manage it.
Integrated pest management takes more effort because workers have to spend more time in the field to keep pests in check.
Sustainable is slightly more labor intensive.
That brings us to Chad Crivelli. He's a third-generation farmer in Dos Palos, California, and he's turned to the Sustainable Cotton Project to make changes at his family's farm.
They saw a need here in the San Joaquin Valley to clean up the environment, the air quality especially.
By helping farmers reduce or eliminate the most toxic chemicals, we're reducing the load of chemicals that would be running off or volatilizing into the air, and that way we're protecting not just the soil and the water, but we're protecting human health as well.
Valley also uses hedgerows, natural barriers that help keep the number of pests down since they attract wildlife and predators.
We've seen a lot of wildlife that we hadn't seen in years, pheasants and quail returning that haven't been in my lifetime in the last 30 years.
California's gone a long way to clean up its crop using this method.
In general, in a cotton field like this, it's never going to be pesticide-free, but we can get it down to the minimal number, which in California it generally is about 1 to maybe 2 applications, maybe as much as 4 applications in a single year.
In other places around the world, it could be as many as 15. It's a toxic mess for the planet and people.
We're promoting healthy communities, and we do that simply by reducing the chemical use of the workers, of their families, of the farmers.
And last up, the gin. It's where the cotton goes after it's harvested. Let's go check it out. It's a noisy place too, where there's a lot going on. This is where the lint gets separated from the cotton.
Lint is the product that comes off of the seed, which the textile mill is looking for to make the yarns and the fabrics.
Mike Davis keeps everything running smoothly out here as the gin's manager. Cotton arrives in these modules.
We actually break it up. We send it into a hopper and then to a drying unit where we dry the fiber.
At 200 degrees, the heat helps separate the lint from the other particles textile manufacturers don't want. Then the lint gets cleaned, the seeds get separated and sent through tubes to end up here.
All of it's used for something. Tell us about what those excess pieces are used for.
Okay, well the seed cotton goes primarily to dairies for feed. It's high in protein.
Even the so-called leftover trash from the whole process can be used in compost.
It's a good potassium and nitrogen source.
Back inside, the lint goes through what's called comber saws. Then it's baled up, tagged, and bagged.
In the end, we have growers who've produced a crop that we believe is cleaner.
It's off to the textile companies who will use it to make the shirt on your back. But it's always important to remember where it came from and how it was grown.
The cotton clothing we wear really does come from somewhere, and it comes from these people who actually are out here in the farmlands growing it, and we work closely with them to make sure that that's grown in a safe and responsible way, so that your t-shirts and your clothing is having at least minimal impact on the environment around.
Pride is the emotion. It's just a proud feeling to know that it's getting actually recognized and other people do appreciate it.
And the Sustainable Cotton Project hopes more and more of that cotton is grown sustainably.
Still ahead, some teens bring an ecosystem back to life.
I didn't know how drastic the environmental changes were and how much it needed to be helped.
They're restoring an area damaged by something you probably never think about.
And what's your school doing to go green?
We think it's a good example for people to work in a eco-environmentally friendly manner.
These guys are gardening, recycling, and a whole lot more. More Eco Company is next.
We all know that too much salt can be bad for you.
And it's bad for the environment, too.
It can disrupt entire ecosystems.
As we found out when we visited the site of an old salt factory. Bet you can't guess what this stuff is. No, it's not snow, or even ice. It's salt. But it's not the kind you want to sprinkle on your French fries. It's the kind that's polluting this environment.
Eden Landing is a former industrial salt pond, harvesting large quantities of salt for about 100+ years.
Salt water was collected in shallow ponds.
That water would be left out to sit in the sun, and of course, what happens when water evaporates and there's salt in it? Does the salt evaporate too? Nope, salt stays down there, so it would get saltier.
Over time, the salt water eventually crystallized, leaving a bed of salt at the bottom. The process is called solar salt production.
It's very interesting how they talked about how the salt would go from one and they'd move it on to another water, and then it'd create more salt, and eventually they'd drain everything and get a lot of salt. I never knew that.
All you can see today are parts of its foundation, a few bricks, and some broken glass. But the excess salt left behind isn't good for the ecosystem.
The bay depends on salt in order to, have the kind of ecosystem it does. However, like with anything, too much of it is a bad thing.
Dylan Chappell is a restoration specialist with Save the Bay. The nonprofit group wants to restore the area to its original marshland state.
It's the second largest wetland restoration project in the whole country, behind only the Florida Everglades. 3 or 4 years ago when I first started coming here, there wasn't really very much marsh here.
That's all changing thanks to efforts from hundreds of volunteers, like these students from Village High School in Pleasanton, California. Dylan Morgan, Savannah Simmons, and Jenny Hammer made the trip out here with their classmates.
We're doing an environmental Save the Bay Day, and we're planting a lot and digging up and watering.
It's really fun. I enjoy being out in nature.
We just take our digging tools and we dig nice big holes in the ground, put the plants in there. We put these nets around them so they don't get eaten by all the jackrabbits or anything, animals that want to eat them.
These students are putting in a plant called gum plant. And gum plant is what we call a pioneer species, meaning that it does great if it's one of the early things that you plant in an area. It helps keep back the invasive species like mustard and thistle, the things that create poor habitat, ruin the soil, and pretty much just take over.
So why restore wetlands in the first place?
The wetlands for a long, long time, up until about the 70s or so, were viewed as a wasteland, as a dump. They smelled funny. We didn't know as a population what they were actually doing for us.
They help control floods, filter water, and provide a habitat that wildlife need to survive.
I didn't know how drastic the environmental changes were and how much it needed to be helped.
These guys hope that one day they'll come back to visit a place that looks very different from what it does today.
I think it's very important because it's our planet, it's where we live, and we need to take care of it and make sure that we all do our part to keep it in good shape.
Well, it's our home. It's not only our home, it's animals' homes, and we like the feeling that we've done something good and helped our earth, because one day it's not going to be here, and that it's not a good thing knowing that if we didn't do something, it could have been our fault that the earth's not here anymore.
It just goes to show there's always room for another chapter in the history book, and it's one we can all help to write.
It does matter if just one person is actually helping. Recycling and reusing your water bottles and picking up trash, putting it in the garbage cans and not throwing stuff on the ground, just simple things like that can help save the world.
It's time to open the Eco-Lingo Dictionary. When it comes to oceans, there's more to climate change than meets the eye. We know that temperatures play a role, but so does something called ocean salinity. It's the measure of salt in the water. That's what NASA's Aquarius mission will study for 3 years as it collects data from space.
So this is going to be a missing piece to the puzzle.
Project scientist Lee Chow says salinity is a huge factor in understanding ocean's role in climate.
Salinity plays such an important role behind the scene, provide the physics and driving the circulation, provide the food supply, and is one of the key drivers of the climate change.
Salinity, along with temperature, determines how dense water is, and that drives ocean currents.
By telling how the seawater goes from one place to the next, we can understand how ocean regulate weather and climate.
Now that's important because the water cycle affects evaporation, rainfall, and our fresh water supplies. Ocean salinity. Know your eco-lingo and be part of the solution.
It's a campaign to save water.
Up next, meet a team who's greening up our community one restaurant at a time.
More Eco Company is next. Next up, one high school's environmental club that's not just greening up their campus.
They're also greening up their community, one restaurant at a time.
So how many times do you get served water when you sit down at a restaurant, but don't end up drinking it? Probably all the time. And it's something that caught the attention of California high school student Dana Wilkie.
I was sitting at a restaurant, and as soon as my family and I sat down, the waiters just brought us these huge glasses of water. And I was like, you know, that's such a waste. Like, why do they have to bring that? I didn't want it, you know?
Wilkie is behind a new campaign in the town of Danville, California, called Just Say Water. The idea is to get restaurants to stop pouring it unless you ask for it.
Water is definitely not an unlimited resource. You know, we will eventually run out of it, even though everyone's like, oh, the ocean's huge. But I mean, we don't have as much fresh water and drinkable water as we need.
To get the program off the ground, the 18-year-old joined forces with Sustainable Danville and lobbied her town council for permission to use the town logo and tabletop signs. Newell Arnerick and Robert Storer say their response was a no-brainer.
When she made the presentation, we all looked at each other and said, we could do this.
So we thought, well, this sounds like a good idea. She says, it's a good idea, I'll take care of it. And really all she asked from us as the town is to give her the support.
It's something Sustainable Danville founder Cynthia Rusi was excited to be part of as well.
On her own, she calculated that if we got half the restaurants in Danville to stop serving water to patrons who didn't want it, we could save almost 700 gallons a month.
This restaurant already serves water in glass bottles, but manager Jenny True says now they won't bring them to the table right away.
Because most of the time, water does go unused, and half of a jug is poured out. If you add all of that up, and then the washing of the unused glasses, it really does add up at the end of the day, and this seemed like a great idea. Hopefully in the long run we can end up saving a lot of water and give back to the community at the same time.
It's something Dana is counting on.
Who knows? Maybe she'll come back. You'll be the mayor of Danville. You only have to be 18 years old, so.
My birthday was last week.
There you go.
Back on her high school campus, Dana's already in public service. She's vice president of her school's environmental and engineering club, E2. Brian Riley is club president.
So traditionally, E2 takes care of the recycling of bottles and cans and glass at Tannermount.
Paige Chittenden and Jackie Lang help organize the weekly roundup.
Every Tuesday we have kids who have signed up prior at our school meetings. So Andrea, you want A and B? They come, we designate halls to them.
A pair of gloves is a must for this job.
Yeah, it can be gross and dirty. And
it's smelly, and you have to wear gloves and hold your breath sometimes.
But it's all for a good cause, because the money they earn from recycling pays for their other projects.
It was great. We went to the to the recycling plant last week, and we made $107, and so that went towards working on the garden.
That brings us out here. Brandon Steele helped design these beds, filled with veggies.
We have onions here on the end. We have 2 types of lettuce here in the middle. And then over here we have Brussels sprouts going and a little bit of red-headed lettuce.
During colder winter months, they'll cover the beds with these to keep the chill away.
We think it's a good example for people to work in a environmentally friendly manner and maybe grow some of their own food at home.
These young people are really hardworking and very much willing to take an initiative and take a stand to make a difference.
Teacher Cindy Egan helps advise the club.
Dana's project, totally her idea. The gardens was something that the kids took on completely by themselves. We really didn't do very much at all, and that's what's really exciting.
So from gardening and recycling to starting a campaign to save water, these guys aren't waiting on the sidelines to do something to help the environment.
It feels good to once a week go out and do something that helps and make our school more sustainable.
If your campus is doing something to go green,
we want to hear about it.
Grab your video camera and start rolling.
Create a video and upload it to our website at eco-company.tv. Did you know an average family of 4 wastes 400 gallons of water every day?
So cutting back not only conserves a natural resource, it also saves the energy it takes to purify it and pump it into our homes.
So here are a few things we can all do.
Turn off the tap while brushing your teeth or shaving, and take shorter showers. Every minute your faucet is on is 3 to 5 gallons of water down the drain.
When doing your laundry, and you all do your own, right? Wait till you've got a full load. Washing just a few items wastes water and electricity.
And this is something you should never do. Washing your car in your driveway can waste 150 gallons. A professional car wash can use 50 to 80% less water. No matter what you do, be eco-wise and be a part of the solution. Thanks for tuning into Eco Company.
For more info on the show, visit our website at eco-company.tv.
And be sure to find us on Facebook. We'll see you next time
on Eco Company.